This video is being brought to you by Satisfy Gaming. Make playing your Switch in portable mode super ergonomic with the Satisfy Gaming grips. They also have case and grip bundles that let you keep the grip on your Switch and store it safely in their high-quality cases. These grips make using your Switch in portable mode as comfortable as a Pro controller. Use the code ReviewTech10 to save 10% off your entire order. Link below in the description.
Skip it up and that up.
It's weird because it honestly feels like 5 minutes ago that I was talking to all of you about the PS4 and Xbox One being launched. I started Review Tech USA in the summer of 2013 full time, and it was on the eve of the next gen consoles. And what a storm it was, man, between Microsoft completely botching the reveal of the Xbox One and Sony trolling them.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
There you had Sony literally trolling Xbox, saying, hey, if you want to trade a game with your friend or let a friend borrow a game, you could just physically hand it to them, because that's what Microsoft was all about, trying DRM, and they were trying to bring the future too quick. It's funny because a lot of the stuff that Microsoft was trying to pull with the reveal of the Xbox One, no one was ready for back then. But a lot of the things they were trying to do back then, if they implemented now or just revealed now, actually they implemented quite a few things, if they revealed them now, we would have been okay with it. But console gamers weren't ready for that yet. As a PC guy, I was used to a lot of what they were saying, but the console community, and I understood this, wasn't ready for what Microsoft was trying to introduce to the market. And then Microsoft went into Kinect, and no one really cared about Kinect, and they actually cut down the performance of the GPU inside of the Xbox One to cut costs, so they could put the Kinect, bundle the Kinect with the Xbox One. The Xbox One launch and reveal was a complete disaster. Sony took advantage of it, and I think that's a huge reason why the PS4 is way more successful this generation than the Xbox One. Now, obviously, when the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One were going to be launched, I was excited, and I watched my old videos. I was excited, but my expectations were tempered because I knew that the specs inside of the console were going to be mid-range at best. The PS4 had a GPU that was equivalent to a Radeon HD 7850, which was a mid-range-ish kind of graphics card. And then the Xbox One, like I said, they cut back on the GPU to cut costs so they could bundle it with the Kinect, which Microsoft thought was the future. How'd that work out for your Microsoft? That GPU was equivalent to a Radeon HD 7790. Now, these aren't exact equivalents because there's no real way with a console to totally know what the equivalent would be, but those weren't mind-blowing graphics cards even back then. Like I said, the 7850 was somewhat mid-range, and the 7790, that was what was in the Xbox One, basically, was more on the entry-level side. So the PS4 and Xbox One, when they came out of the gate, and I know I've said this in a whole bunch of videos, weren't mind-blowing. We were well into everyone having 1080p TVs in their home. 4K was something that was starting to become attainable, and here we have consoles that can't play Battlefield 4 at a full 1080p. To get 60 FPS on both the PS4 and Xbox One, that game had to run at 900p on the PS4 and 720p on the Xbox One. So it was just a weird time. And when you hear numbers like 900p, 720p, 1080p, it kind of made you scratch your head, because those were resolutions that the 7th generation of consoles, the previous generation, could hit as well. Uncharted 2 ran at 720p. Sports games and fighting games ran at HD resolutions on the 7th generation of consoles. So they weren't mind-blowing. I was excited for them, but they, once you heard the specs and then you actually got the console in your home, the PS4 and Xbox One, your expectations became tempered, for lack of a better term. And that's why I think we got the mid-gen upgrades or refreshes with the Xbox One X and PS4 Pro. You know, imagine just having just a base PS4 and Xbox One now in 2019 when we're already seeing 8K televisions on the market. It would be laughable at best if Sony and Microsoft only offered the base hardware with its capabilities. And then we could go into how the 8 Jaguar cores from AMD for the CPU in both the PS4 and Xbox One were anemic from the get-go. A lot of people said their total compute power was the equivalent to like a Core i3 from Intel. What generation that may be, I'm not sure, but a Core i3 from Intel or a dual-core Celeron. And yeah, I understand we could go into the fact that, you know, having 8 physical cores and multi-threaded code going to those cores, it would still be better to have an 8-core weak processor than have a 2-core powerful processor. But, you know, I remember Digital Foundry when the PS4 and Xbox One kind of first came out. They said that a lot of times they felt that games, when there was frame rate stutters, so on and so forth on the PS4 and Xbox One, it was due to the fact that those Jaguar cores were holding back the systems. Well, now here we are on the eve of the 9th generation of consoles, the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlett from Microsoft. And the specs this time around seem a lot more exciting, and the consoles seem a lot more powerful than when we went from the 360 and PS3 to the PS4 and Xbox One. You know, it was funny. I saw some people trolling me on a recent video saying, "Oh my God, Rich G, next-gen consoles are more powerful than the previous generation? Who would have thought?" Well, yeah, but it doesn't always mean it's an exciting leap. Like, when you went from the PS3 to PS4, it wasn't exciting. This time around, man, things seem really spicy. I know I've been saying spicy a lot, but the jump this time seems really to be substantial, and I'm excited. And even if you're a PC gamer, like I've said before, this should excite you, because if the consoles get a step up, your games on PC are going to get a huge step up. So let's compare the specs that we know about the PS5 and Xbox Scarlett, see which console could possibly be more powerful, and why these specs are a big deal. Even if one of these consoles is not as capable as the other, we're still going to get some great games. Well, one of the first things that I'm excited about and thankful that finally they're going to a much more capable processor is Sony and Microsoft are using AMD Zen 2 architecture. That's the same architecture in the 3000 series CPUs that AMD just launched over this summer, and they're a beast of a chip. I have a 3900X and a 3700X in a couple of my computers, and I know firsthand how much more capable those CPUs are than the ones that were in the PS4 and Xbox One. Obviously, I can't do a benchmark on both of them because the PS4 and Xbox One are not PCs, but they're using the same architecture that I have on my computers. I know what they're capable of. I've edited video on them and played games, and they're going to be a huge step up in computing performance. And with that, we're going to see improvements in things like artificial intelligence. We're going to see more destructible environments, better physics, more open worlds. The NPCs, that kind of falls under artificial intelligence, are going to be more interactive. Games will load quicker. All around, those processors are going to be a huge step up. And what's funny is now, you know, obvious things are obvious, Rich. There was actually articles written back in the day where the cell processor inside of the PlayStation 3 was actually more capable than the processor, the Jaguar 8-core processor in the PlayStation 4. So even though there's really no true way to confirm that, you get what I'm saying? When you go from the PS4 to PS5, we're going to see a jump. There technically wasn't a jump in computing performance from the PS3 to the PS4. So just because there's a next-gen console, obviously the PS4 with its graphics capabilities is more powerful than the PS3, don't get me wrong, but the CPU held back the current generation of consoles. This time around, Sony and Microsoft learned that lesson and went with more powerful Zen 2 architecture processors from AMD to make up for that, so the CPUs are not going to be bottlenecking the console overall. Now, graphics, this is something that I just actually found out today. Now, I thought both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlett, which could still be the case, we got to take this all with a grain of salt, was going to be based on the Navi architecture from AMD. And PlayStation just confirmed, or Sony just confirmed, there's going to be ray tracing hardware acceleration baked into the PS5, thankfully. But with the Xbox, AMD may be using future graphics architecture from AMD called AMD Arcturus. And this is based on a 7nm plus architecture, so they may have a jump on the PlayStation 5 in graphics. Now, that kind of conflicts with what Colin Moriarty, the former IGN editor, said, where he had insiders saying that the PlayStation 5 was substantially more powerful than the Xbox Scarlett. But there you go. You're going to have even reputable people who are getting conflicting information. But that would be interesting if the Xbox Scarlett actually uses future unreleased, because Navi just came out. You can buy a 5000 series graphics card from AMD. Granted, there's no ray tracing tech built into it. But I have a Navi. I have a 5700 XT Anniversary Edition that's based on Navi architecture. Just the PlayStation 5 is also going to have extra ray tracing tech from AMD that those graphics cards don't have. Arcturus isn't out yet. Now, I've also heard other rumors that the Xbox Scarlett's not going to have Arcturus, and Arcturus is meant for some other professional application. But again, take all these with a grain of salt. We'll find out when the consoles are in our homes, and I'm sure people are going to dissect them and reverse engineer them, and we'll figure that out. But that is interesting if the Xbox Scarlett is actually going to have next-gen technology inside of it, and the PS5 is going to be one step behind with current generation technology, and that would be a blow for Sony. I mean, it wouldn't mean that the PS5 is totally in a different league than the Xbox Scarlett, but we may have the reverse of what happened this generation, where the PlayStation 4 had games look better and run at higher resolutions than on the Xbox One, whereas the PS5 games may run at lower resolutions and lower frame rates than the Xbox Scarlett. But again, grain of salt. It's just fun to talk about this stuff and see all the rumors and talk about all the technology that's being implemented. Now, both consoles are going to really utilize solid state hard drives, have NVMe SSD, even faster technology according to Sony and Microsoft than what we have in our computers. And it's going to be real interesting to see what they do with that, because I'm so glad they're getting away from mechanical drives. For any of you out there, which I'm sure a lot of you now, and maybe you don't even realize it, who have used solid state drives, I've been using them since 2011, how much of a difference they make with load times. And I even have a 4 terabyte SSD in one of my computers, and how much of a difference they make with game load times is unreal. Whether it be streaming assets in an open world or load times when a game first starts up, you cannot compare even a fast mechanical drive to a slow solid state drive. I'm not even talking a PCI Express NVMe drive. I'm talking even just a SATA solid state drive. You just can't compare the two of them. And to hear that not only is it going to improve loading times, but developers are going to use it to make better game world experiences where they could have bigger worlds because they don't have to worry about assets loading in, is going to be a bigger deal than I think even you realize. You know, you're like, Rich, who cares? It's faster loading times. I'm patient. No, it's going to be much more than that. You're going to see less pop-in. Draw distances could possibly be larger because they could stream assets and textures faster. You could have 600 gigabytes of RAM for system memory, but if the hard drive can't keep up, that's still going to be a bottleneck holding back your console or your computer. But now if they have fast memory and fast storage, and that's how they stream the assets and data for the games, it's going to make a huge difference in games. You'll see when it comes out how much more immersive game worlds can become, simply because the games can access the data faster because the storage is much faster than it is on the PS4 and Xbox One. There's a YouTuber out there named Solid Rev. I'll have a link to his video in the description, where he's just using an external SSD, and he was showing the difference with Division 2 using it on this external SSD. And this is a USB SSD, which there's still the bandwidth limitations of USB 3 on there. And it was still a better experience than using the internal mechanical drive on his PS4. Yes, I know you could put a different drive inside the PS4, but he decided to use a USB SSD. And that made a huge difference. Imagine the solid state drive technology being built into the consoles, having a ton more bandwidth, and what they're going to be able to do with that. Now, both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlett, even though I know it hasn't been directly said, I believe, by Microsoft, I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't even matter. They're both going to have 4K Blu-ray support if they have a mechanical drive. We know Sony's going to have a mechanical drive. The reason why is, yeah, okay, great, you could watch 4K Blu-rays, whoopee, but 4K Blu-rays have up to 100 gigabytes of data storage on them. And with games now surpassing that, you need big storage. And 4K Blu-rays offer the amount of storage that's necessary for these next-gen games. Now, look, I hate to tell you, even if you have the full 100 gigabytes filled up on that triple layer 4K Blu-ray, you're also going to have huge patches too. It's one of the concerns I have for next generation, because I'm sure to keep costs down, I'm sure they're not going to put like a 4 terabyte SSD inside of the next gen consoles, because those drives alone go for $400 still, and that's actually a fairly good deal. So a 1 terabyte drive and if say each game is 100 gigabytes, and you're going to have the operating system on there, you're not going to even be able to fit 10 games or 10 games worth of patches and things like that onto the hard drive. But 4K Blu-rays were obvious. If we're going to still have physical games, you're going to need a large disc with a ton of data on it to store those games. So I knew that 4K Blu-rays were what these next-gen consoles were going to use. Now, both the PlayStation 5 and next Xbox have touted 8K resolutions. It's funny how they say it though, because they say it in a way that it could mislead you into thinking 8K gaming, but they don't directly say 8K gaming, because they know damn well, as much as these consoles seem very capable, that they're not going to run any games at 8K resolutions. Even a basic, I can't even see like another basketball game which would be the only kind of game remotely close, or a fighting game remotely close at being able to run at 8K, running native 8K resolutions on these consoles, because that would require a ton of computing power and a ton of GPU power that would make these consoles, the PS5 and Xbox Scarlett, their prices be outrageous. I mean, I have a 2080 Ti in this computer actually under my desk, and I wouldn't be running games at 8K, and that's an expensive $1,200 graphics card. So 8K, they're probably meaning when Netflix starts to stream in 8K, or they'll upscale games. They won't render them in native 8K. They'll upscale them from 4K to 8K. But 8K seems to be a buzzword for this generation, and I'm just trying to keep it real and put it out there that no game is natively going to run in 8K. Maybe if they do the same thing they did this generation and they come out with an Xbox Scarlett Pro and a PS5 Pro, maybe then we could see something like that. But right now in 2020, it's not happening. There's not even high-end graphics cards on PCs, top-of-the-line stuff, isn't running games in 8K. There's no way a console that's probably going to be anywhere from $500 to $700 is going to run games in native 8K resolutions. It's a buzzword, and it's something to try to get you psyched for the next gen consoles. I'm just keeping it real with you. Now, the max frame rates that have been touted for both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Scarlett are 120 FPS, and that's interesting because I would like to see that. That would be cool. As a person, it was funny, when I was younger, I was more about higher resolutions, and as long as it was over 30 frames per second, who cares? But now I rather have a lower resolution, even a game run at 1080p or 1440p, and get a higher frame rate. Those smooth frame rates, man, make games more fun, more responsive, more enjoyable. And if we start to see, obviously there's monitors out there that go well beyond 120 hertz refresh rates, but if we see TVs start to support that, where you get a huge LG OLED TV touting 120 hertz and you're playing games at those frame rates, that would be absolutely amazing. Big screen, high refresh rate gaming could be a really big deal, especially with competitive games, where competitive first-person shooters like Call of Duty, etc., 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 coming to these next-gen consoles and running at those high refresh rates. It would be pretty mind-blowing. And as a person on PC who's enjoyed that for a while, and having a laptop, which I'm going to be reviewing relatively soon, that has 144 hertz refresh rate, those high refresh rates really make a big difference in gaming. In my opinion, it's a bigger difference than higher resolutions or better graphics. So next-gen consoles bringing that is pretty exciting. Now, I don't know much about the next Xbox controllers, but I do know that the PlayStation 5 controller is going to have some interesting features. Instead of having those typical vibrating motors, which are kind of loose and messy feeling, they're going to have haptic feedback in there, similar to what a high-end smartphone now, whether it be a top-of-the-line Android phone or an iPhone has, where it's kind of a more visceral, natural vibration that you feel in the controller, and that's awesome. And they're also going to have adaptive triggers that could simulate different things, like maybe a bow and arrow, the tension of the bow, you pull it back, you'll feel it on the left trigger, and other things like that. In racing games, you're going to feel different feedback back here. I think that's all awesome. And on top of it too, they're going to have USB-C. So no more weak, anemic micro USB where you have to make sure you're putting it in the right way and they break easy. USB-C is much better. Thank God. Micro USB, just go away. I want to see it completely die in a fire with this generation. Glad smartphones got rid of it. It's about time controllers do. I know the next Xbox Elite controller is actually not, it's coming out relatively soon, is actually not going to have micro USB. It's going to have USB-C. Also, two older Xbox controllers from the Xbox One, even the Xbox Elite 2 controller, will work with the Scarlett. So even though we don't know specifics about the Scarlett controller in and of itself, these are going to work with it. So that's awesome. They didn't let you do that with 360 controllers on the Xbox One. Now, virtual reality support, this is where things get interesting. I wasn't a fan of PlayStation VR. It was low-res screens. My glasses got fogged up in it quick. I've recently used the Oculus Quest, which is the portable VR, which is amazing, and the Oculus Rift S, and it was a much more enjoyable VR experience, to the point where it actually changed a lot of my opinions on virtual reality. And it seems that Sony, with their PlayStation VR 2, which we hear a lot of rumors is coming and it'll be utilized on the PlayStation 5, is going to be a game changer, no pun intended. I'm hearing they're going to really improve the headset. It's going to be wireless VR, which would be a huge deal. I've tried the Quest and nothing beats wireless VR. Having untethered virtual reality is a huge difference. And I'm hoping that's the case with PSVR, to have a wireless headset that you don't have a gigantic cord hanging out of your back would be fantastic, and that would make VR much more appealing to the masses. If you haven't seen the Quest yet, let me know if you'd want to see a review on it, because I do have a headset and I do plan eventually to review it, but I want to see the interest you guys have in me reviewing the Oculus Quest. So one place Sony really lagged behind is with their PlayStation Now game streaming service compared to Xbox Game Pass. Originally it was $19.99, and originally it was streaming games only, so if you had a slow internet connection, wasn't really a viable option for you. But now Sony has dropped the price of PlayStation Now to $9.99. You could also download games, and for a service with a ton of games, it's actually a pretty good deal. But I still feel Xbox Game Pass beats it, simply because, one, you could sign up for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for $14.99, which is only $5 more than PlayStation Now. But it also, if you own a PC, you could download games on both your PC and your Xbox One console and get access to first-party games from Microsoft day one when they come out. So Sony has some catch up to do. And also too, Microsoft with xCloud, which is what they're working on for next generation, they want you to play their games everywhere, whether it be on the Xbox Scarlett console or your smartphone. They're coming out with a controller that works with your smartphone. They want you to be playing Xbox games everywhere. And it'll be interesting to see how Sony combats that or competes with that. I know they're working with Microsoft for their cloud-based technology, but they're still competitors. So let's see what Sony implements with that, because Microsoft is ready for gaming to go everywhere, and Sony doesn't seem as ready. So only time will tell what will happen with that. Now, one thing we do know about the Scarlett that we don't know about the PlayStation 5 is what big launch game the system is going to have. PS5, don't know. With the Xbox Scarlett, we know we're going to get Halo Infinite. As of now, game could still be delayed, but that's a pretty big deal for it's launching with one of its key franchises, and that's a way for a console to be successful. We've seen it in the past before. And if you really think about it, it was Halo that actually made Microsoft a viable console competitor, because I really feel if the original Xbox didn't launch with Halo, there may not be an Xbox now. So that's a pretty big deal, but we'll see if it actually happens. I know there's some turmoil with development of the game, but I'm sure they're going to try their damnedest to get that game to launch with the Xbox Scarlett, because they know it'll be a system seller. Sony, I'm sure, has something up their sleeve too to be a system seller. I hope anyway, because a big game would definitely make the next gen console for Sony fly off the shelves. But right now, we're not sure what that is. All we do know is both of these consoles are coming holiday 2020. That's not too far away, and I'm very excited for this next generation. We seem to be getting a big boost in hardware, a much bigger one from the 7th generation to 8th generation, and I think gaming is going to get a hell of a lot better. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one.